Okay, this is segment 3. I'm with Mr. John Jeckovich. The date is July 3rd, 2024. We're on chapter 6 of his book, Their Mother's Sons, and I'm picking up on section 3 right now, page 128. I felt lonely, but no worse for it. It was a feeling I had felt too often in my young life, which would be snuffed out if no other feeling felt for that of loneliness. What was it about time that it made me lonely and despondent figure, not loved by anyone, as least of all my own flesh and blood? Lord knows I did not blame my parents. They had many problems which left them very room for anything else or anyone. To my mother, it was a daily struggle for survival and permanence, and no one would share their fears and doubts. My sister must have given her some small measure of support and comfort, as they seemed fairly close during the time I was home. My mother was probably apprehensive about that relationship also, since I had left her under the different circumstances. What would be my sister's outlook several years from now? Naturally, she would want to lead her own life, thereby leaving the mother once alone again. So, did your sister Sally finally get married?
The what?
Did your youngest sister Sally finally get married?
Yeah.
Who did she marry?
She married that stupid, oh, she married that guy in the oh, he was stationed on the international park where people came in. He checked them.
Okay.
He was an immigration.
Did your sister have any children?
Yeah.
How many children?
Yeah, Jesus, I don't know.
Did you stay close to your sister after she got married?
Well, it was as close as I was before, yeah.
When she got married, did she stay in Niagara Falls?
No, she stayed in that little suburbs outside of Niagara Falls.
Oh, LaSalle.
LaSalle, yeah.
Okay, all right. And what was her husband's name? You remember?
Gus, I think.
Okay. Wasn't he the guy that smoked the cigars?
Yeah, he was the guy smoking the cigars, yeah.
Did your mother object to that?
Well, he tried to smoke outside, but no, he didn't do as much as that stupid Adeline. Adeline smoked right in the house, raised as hell.
What'd your mother say?
She said, "No smoking," and she said, "Please, mother, don't. I'm here to talk to you and have your company. Don't get me mad."
What did Lookie say to her?
He didn't say nothing.
Didn't say nothing? Didn't you put a sign on the building at one time?
Actually, I sat on the front door, kitchen door, no smoking.
Did they pay attention to it?
That didn't affect her, though.
Okay. The train finally departed the station. As before, there were more servicemen than civilians on board. Fortunately, I was lucky again to get a quiet compartment with no loud gambling or parties going on. The train compartment was mostly made up of soldiers on their way back to bases and camps in Texas and in Florida. As they seemed acquainted with one another, I did not join into their conversation, but looked out the windows at the scenery going by. I soon fell asleep and slept soundly for several hours until we reached Cleveland. The journey back to Owensboro would be the opposite of the trip up. It would be Buffalo, Erie to Cleveland, to Columbus, a short stay in Cincinnati, on to Louisville, Evansville, and finally a bus trip to Owensboro.
Yeah, that's a catch-all way to get back.
What?
It was a bad way to get back.
Yeah, a long way. Returning from the snack bar, I once again settled down in my seat and prepared for the long night ahead. It'd be dark shortly, and there would be no distractions of the scenery going by the time would drag by. The only other alternatives were to read, join in a conversation with someone, or just sleep. I began to read a paperback that I bought at Mario's. What's Mario's?
Was that store on Pine Avenue we went to after church? Like we got the magazine, we got the newspaper.
And so that's where you bought a paperback?
Yeah, Mario's, yeah. Wall Street Journal, yeah.
On my way from the cleaners, that was the last time I was on Pine Avenue. Although the book was interesting under different circumstances, I soon lost all my sense of concentration and put it back in my overnight bag. The motion of the train made me sleepy. The motion of the train made me sleepy, and the overhead lights were off, which made it conducive to sleep. I awoke briefly several times during the night, but each time managed to fall asleep again. A little after daylight, I woke again, and we looked out the window at the sunrise. We would be shortly coming into Cincinnati for a brief stop, and then to Louisville and Owensboro. The stop at Cincinnati was much shorter than the stop we encountered on a previous trip. I had no sooner getting off the train to stretch my legs than the conductor was shouting, "Everyone back on board." We passed Louisville about 1200 hours, and they were getting closer to Evansville. I began to think how Ann would look and react to me. I knew her greeting would be warm, but as usual, we'd sense each other's true feelings. The train pulled into Evansville Station, and I began immediately looking for a bus to Owensboro. I decided that I'd take a cab to Weatherbury's Bed and Breakfast, get checked in and shower and shave, and get back to the station to wait for Ann's arrival. The bus trip to Evans and Owensboro was familiar and heartwarming. I felt in a way that I was returning home. As the bus drove into the station and stopped, I felt good at being here, as if I belonged. I got off the bus and headed for the cab stand. I'd taken a few steps when someone called my name. It was Ann. I turned around, outstretched my arms, ran to her, threw my arms around her, and kissed her passionately. It was great seeing and holding her once again, and I got over my initial surprise as I asked her what she was doing here so early. "I came early because I wanted to see you as soon as possible," she said, "and besides, I wanted to help get you settled in." All the while she was smiling her usual sweet, loving smile, and I was glad she was here. I did not feel lonely anymore. I told her that I was delighted that she was here and I missed her greatly. She looked inviting, and I noticed that she had done her hair differently, which made her all the more attractive and appealing. I whispered that she looked beautiful, and she smiled and took my hands, and we walked to her car. Ann objected strenuously when I informed her of my plans to stay at the Weatherbury. She insisted I stay at her place, stating that they had plenty of room, and I did not want to impose on her mother's hospitality just now. Perhaps later in the week we could discuss it once again. We would have to see how things went and take it from there. As we drove down US 90 towards Weatherbury's, I again mentioned to Ann how much I missed her and kissed her on the cheek. It was good to be at her side, talking and laughing with her. I did not realize how much I really missed her until I sat next to her, intently watching her as she spoke and moved her beautiful body while she maneuvered the car through the streets. Minutes?
20.
I acquired the same room that I had the two previous occasions, Anne made herself right at home, and she sank into the familiar large rocker across her stocking legs. I reached down and kissed her, saying that I missed her very much. After a few minutes, I whispered in her ear that I should shower, shave, and change my uniform after a long train ride. She let go of my hand and said, "I'll just sit here while you take a shower." She added, "Do you not want me to join?" I said, "Yes, but stay there." The hot shower felt good, and I stood under the refreshing spray, wondering about Anne. After shaving, I put on a clean uniform and left my shirt tucked into my t-shirt and trousers. Anne was still in the rocker looking up to me. I became serious and stated that I should have never left, and I felt terrible when I just did that. I knew that I should spend some time at home, but frustrated the last minute I did not want to leave her. Rather than make the positive move, I bungled it, trying to appease both sides of my ambiguous nature. I also told Anne that I carried way too much excess baggage in the emotional arena from my past life, and I was afraid they would interfere with our relationship, which I cherished very much. I stated that I was unsure and I really good for her, and that I did not want to cause her any undue pain and suffering. I said, "I know that I love you deeply and positively, and that is the main reason that I had question in my part of life. I don't want to hurt you in any way, as I'm terrified at the prospect of doing just that." My voice began to tremble and weaken somewhat, and I continued stating once again how we first met and the insight of instantly gained in our first encounter. Yet we were still unsure of the true predispositions towards one another until our second meeting. She interrupted by placing her finger on my lips, and she got out of the rocker before I was aware what she was doing. I'm a big girl now, and I can do my own thinking. She quickly added, "If you weren't good for me, I realized I wouldn't be here." She quickly got up and walked to the window and looked out at me and said thoughtfully, peered at the ceiling. She asked if I was hungry. I said that she had questioned me once before, and I wondered if she would recall what I said. She smiled coyly, walked towards me, and stood over me. She was beautiful from any angle. I told her so. We decided to dine at the Shirley's Townhouse Restaurant on 3rd Street, a short distance from where we were now, and went to the bathroom to freshen up and put on my shirt and tie.
Shirt and tie.
So when you're in Owensboro, if you didn't have a proper military uniform, you'd be in trouble with the Army.
Yeah, and people, yeah.
MPs would haul you in or warn you.
They'll take your serial number and where you're from.
So you got to make sure that you're in full uniform, right?
Yeah. You got to be fully dressed.
All right. After leaving the restaurant, Anne suggested a movie and said that she would pay. I objected but insisted. I was rather thankful as I was running low on cash. The movie was Miss Minerva with Greer Carson and Walter Pidgeon. I always enjoyed a movie with Anne, watching her seriousness as she watched a critical part of the movie unfold. It also afforded me opportunity to put my arm around her and brush my leg against hers. After the news we left, it was already dark outside. I made a suggestion that we drive out to the bluff at the river and watch the lights of Evansville below. As usual, it was crowded with onlookers, and Anne finally found a spot and parked the car. She put her head back, and I reached over and kissed her. I whispered that I would miss her all this very much. She agreed, saying that we would have a difficult time adjusting after I left. I thought of something and I was going to ask her earlier. "Why aren't you in school tonight?" I blurted out. And why were you here so early?" I acted like one of my sergeants back at camp. I thought, but the questions just came popping up, and I waited in anticipation for her answers. She smiled and repeatedly said, "I took the rest of the week off." Snuggling closer to me, she added, "I had friends keeping notes on classes for me." She sighed and looked up at me. I asked her if that was going to work out satisfactorily, and she stated I felt guilty that she was missing so much school. "You worry too much," she said, reaching over and kissing me. "But I love it," she said softly. When they talked about her friend Margaret and how she would rather peeved at being left out, Anne mentioned that Margaret was rather jealous that I preferred Anne. I quickly remarked that Margaret was nice, but Anne had overwhelmed me and that was not sufficiently recovered yet. I took her hand and began to rub her fingers. I always felt the touch of her fingers were elegant and pleasurable, as it always aroused me. Oh boy. Oh boy. She laid her head on my shoulder, and I could feel the softness of her hair. She talked about her mother and the ordeal she had to go through with the sudden and tragic death of her husband. She also said that her mother was impressed with me and liked me very much. She also said that her mother was impressed with me and liked me very much. I was not like a typical soldier she had formed an opinion about, and also reiterated that I was the first serviceman that she knew intimately. As a matter of fact, she knew no other servicemen. She was not frequent the local USOs in town. Besides, there was not too many servicemen who made the trip to Owensboro. Her life had revolved around school and making her mother's life more meaningful after the death of her father. She had thought about after graduation and wondered how she would manage her new career and still look after her mother. I immediately struck me that she had some same problems that I acquired relative to my mother's situation. I then said that being here in the picture made things even more complicated, and I was another factor to consider and to adjust to. Minutes?
11.
She exclaimed, and she could not handle it without any problem. She could handle it without any problem, and it was the least of her concern. Without realizing and not thinking before I spoke, I said my mother would present a problem and that it could not be resolved that quickly. We would have a difficult time with her. I would go so far as to say that in all probability it would jeopardize our relationship. She was startled by the exclamation and puzzled by what I just said. I then tried to explain my way out of this predicament. I had stated that the explanation was puzzled, but I had just said. I then tried to explain my way out of this predicament. I had started by saying that my mother was a strong-willed and had very definite ideas relative to what she believed. Our religion would be a problem, for she was deeply devout Catholic and felt strongly that one should not commingle out of one's established doctrine.
You go where?
Your mother says you should not commingle out of one's established doctrine.
Established doctor?
No, your mother said, your mother's a Catholic, and she says you should not mingle outside your established doctrine. That means the only person you should mingle with, meaning the opposite sex, was Catholic. You shouldn't be with a Protestant or a Baptist.
Well, that's what they believed in then.
That's what your mother thought. As I attempted to make it clear that I had said these last several minutes, I could see the despair in Anne's face, and I wish I had not gone down that path. Cognizant of the fact I said more than I should have, and seeing Anne's reaction to what I divulged, I decided to forge ahead and go all the way and let the chips fall where they may. I continued at the core of the discussion. My mother, I held her hand in mine and began to stating that I assured my mother would love her as I did, but it would take time for my mother to adjust to the idea of her presence. She was extremely independent, or at least she thought so. She would gradually begin to exclude herself from any relationship with us and slowly gravitate in resenting our personal life together. I felt I had presented a dismal, eerie picture regarding my family and attempted to change the subject. Anne would not hear of it and prodded me on in pursuit of an explanation for the statements I've just made. My face became warm as the blood raced to it. I had never talked that intensely with anyone about my family.
Huh.
I blurted out that my mother was cantankerous.
Your mother was what?
Your mother was cantankerous.
As what?
Your mother was cantankerous.
Oh.
Your mother was cantankerous in many ways and was a difficult person to get to know. But I interjected once she got over that rough exterior, she was the kindest, warmest person imaginable.
7 minutes.
Shit. Come on, I gotta go, Dave.
She would do anything for you, providing it was for her own good. But there was always the arbitration in her personality that filtered out much of her relationship with other people.
Shit.
You have to use the restroom?
Huh?
You have to use the restroom?
No.
Okay. If you do, I can take a break here. What do you want to do?
What?
You want to use the restroom?
No, what time is it?
Almost 9.
9?
Want me to continue reading? You want me to continue reading?
No, Dave.
Huh?
No.
All right. Shut it down right here.
Okay.